How's it going, everybody? My name is Dushan Wills. Here at Gaming Over 30, we are interviewing another dev, Kevin Otoshi. How's it going?
Hello. Hi, my name's Kevin Otoshi.
So, Kevin, I want to go through a lot of different things, but there is one thing I do want to ask you right now.
Sure, yeah.
What's the last game you played?
The last game that I just played was the game that I'm developing called Marshmallow Party.
Oh, nice. So, Marshmallow Party. We got a chance to play it a little bit. I do think it's a fun, really simple game. But what is the last video game have you played, too?
Video game. I think the last video game I played was Spiritfarer.
All right.
Yeah, kind of a indie game about kind of like the afterlife. You're helping these characters on a boat and kind of figuring out the last threads of their story to kind of get them closure on their life so they can move on.
I like to just kind of get that icebreaker, see where your life has been for a little bit. But, Kevin, gonna give, a little introduction about yourself, can kind of let the people know, like, what you all about.
Yeah, so my name's Kevin Otoshi. I'm an indie game designer from San Francisco. I was born and raised here. I do both video game design and board game design. I went to school for programming and game design at UC Santa Cruz and have been doing indie development for almost 10 years now. Started my own company last year, trying to get the ground running on getting my own stuff out there and kind of have that journey and then finally get to a peak to start actualizing the ideas that I have.
Dude, fantastic. 10 years kind of going through like your own personal journey, kind of going into game dev, a lot of that. And you can program and stuff too, but the game that you're making right now is an actual card game, kind of like a party game.
Yeah.
That aspect. What was the reason to push for a party game rather than kind of do maybe like a Unity or Unreal kind of indie game itself?
Yeah, I got more into board games in college. I had exposure with like Friday night board game nights from friends. And it kind of opened me up to the world of tabletop. Since I was younger, we used to kind of tinker with games and add pieces to it to modify them in ways that we wanted. So I've always had that taste for the physical card design. And so maybe in 2015-ish, I tried to make a game with my cousins on a camping trip. Yeah. And then we kind of stumbled across the Marshmallow roasting card game, Marshmallow Party. And it's been like an on and off process since then to get it to where it is now. But it's been fun to see that development and help me explore the physical kind of board game, card game side of design.
Yeah, and when I played it looked like you were pretty much at your final design almost, because it's like you had the art, you have real cards, everybody got a chance to play. It was really easy to get into. When I kind of look at games where, me and my wife can kind of really jump in, or games where I can get people to kind of get the concept really easy and stuff, and like 3 to 4 people are really excited to kind of see the kind of board games and stuff. Especially party games have been such a big thing now, where after Cards Against Humanity, everybody was like, what, simple design games. It just seemed like it's something that could just go for everybody. I have to ask, man, how old are you?
I'm 32.
32, dude, you look nothing like it.
I know. I've been getting comments that I look like a student.
Dude,
so
I was gonna say you were 25. Honestly, I was like, okay, he's been doing it for a while. I can see him being, out straight out of college, but yeah, man, you got the elixir, man. Everything is looking good for you. I'm sitting here having to dye my beard and having to do all this other stuff just, to feel 35. Yeah, but that is exciting.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm really happy for all the stuff that you're doing, and you're having something coming out. It's just interesting, but I have to ask, do you have time to play games, just for fun?
I do, yeah. Between the friend groups that I have that help me get into new games, or I have a board game group that we play. We used to play every week when I lived in San Francisco, but I live about an hour away now, so. But I think part of the process for me of learning how to be a better designer is taking that time to experiment and play kind of what's out there, what speaks to me, and the games that, to me, are the kind of games that I want to make. So learning tips and design tricks from what inspires me, then pulling that and putting it into the games that I make too.
So does the common point, being a part of a group, kind of help you kind of repetition on just kind of playing games more often? Do you feel like if you didn't have the group, you wouldn't be playing as much?
For board games, for sure, yeah. I think that group, certain people in the group are the ones that buy a lot of new games, and they're also the ones who get really deeply into a game, where I'll come in and they're like, oh, we've been playing this for a few weeks, and I'm pretty good at picking up the basics of games. So their skill level will help me, get into it really deeply and understand the mechanics. And they're always down to try new stuff too and help play test the game that I'm working on. So it's a good mix of new and old, and learning design through that process.
And one thing I've kind of learned about San Francisco, or at least, how we kind of been here, at GDC and stuff, is like there are a lot of people with a similar mindset. And I noticed like just a lot of people just love board games over here a lot.
Yeah.
I've seen some wildly crazy board games kind of all over the place. And it's just, I guess it's nice where you have people that not only like board games, but can also think about like, oh, what if I did this or I did that, or maybe I could change something differently. I know you went into programming, but how come you didn't go straight into like game design?
The program that I went to at UC Santa Cruz is like more of a CS focused program, and then the game design part is kind of the adjacent.
So what would you say is kind of like, oh, we want you to really do the programming, but we want you to give you enough knowledge to do the game design?
Yeah, I think it's more emphasized on the technology aspect. So how do you program a game? How do you take kind of programming techniques? Like we did some AI courses and optimization stuff to make sure that it runs well. But the design was smaller. It was more like some people would get into the design and lead the teams on like the concept, but most people would be more involved with the programming side of it. So like I was one of the project leads on a game because I'm more of a designer, I think, at heart, even though I was learning programming.
Yeah.
And then I think that was valuable to learn like team management and how to like get people around a concept. So I'm glad that that opportunity was there, even though it was more programming focused.
I feel like it's just very interesting to kind of go that way. And honestly, I wish I had the opportunity to. With my university, it was like just straight software engineering, very generic. I'm happy for the knowledge that I got, but it would have been nice to kind of get the design or like how to work with art assets and everything. Did you go to that school for that program? What really kind of started you on as a this path on gaming?
So I think I've always wanted to design games since I was a little kid. I didn't know what that meant. Like I was like, oh, games are cool. I love games. Like I want to make games, but I don't know. I didn't know what programming was or what even game design was. But if I go back to like when I was small, the sketchbooks, most kids are drawing like people and characters and stuff.
Yeah.
I would draw maps. I would take like Zelda or Pokemon and stuff and draw my own kind of little adventures that you could actually play through on paper. Like go to like collect items and write them down on the side. And to go to UC Santa Cruz in high school, my animation teacher he found out about the program and he knew that I was interested in game design. So he recommended that I apply to that. Probably one of the only public schools when I went to school in the area that had anything about game design. So I just was interested in game design as much as I could, and the programming was the main focus, but the game design was also still there.
So you kind of already said it, but you were kind of into like games at a really early age, and you even took it as far as kind of wanting to do your own designs and even create games when you were younger. I gotta ask, how was your playtime then versus to how you tackle it now?
As a small kid, my parents would let me play, like as long as I did my homework or was on top of school. I'm pretty sure I was just like playing games whenever I had downtime. So I think I was bad at games, which made me play them more. I remember like Link to the Past on Super Nintendo. I got stuck on something and my dad couldn't figure out how to do it either. So we had to call the Nintendo hotline, which was way back then because there was no online forums or anything. And we called a guy and
there's the age.
Yeah, there was this red mouse enemy that you had to like turn your body to defeat. And we couldn't figure it out. That you had to like turn your body after you shot an arrow at it. And in high school, I played a lot of Warcraft 3, so I would go home, play, or do my homework, and then just play like the whole night. So my whole routine was just how much could I get in my schedule, whatever I wanted to be playing.
Gotcha.
But nowadays, I think I don't have the capacity to play like the 60+ hour kind of AAA big games. I think I get burnt out by them or get distracted, and then I forget where I am in a game and have to start over because I'm the kind of person who needs to be immersed all the way through.
We talk about that a lot.
So I play a lot more indie stuff because it can be 10, 20 hours, or I can go at a slow pace and go at my own speed, and it feels more bite-sized. And it also reminds me more of like stuff that I used to play where you could beat it in a few days if you sat down versus like months of time, which is fun, but I don't have that capacity yet.
So you definitely know that like there's just some games that there's a high bar to it that right now you just can't clear it. Not because you don't want to play them, but it just takes a little bit over time. And right now you just don't have that kind of energy to give to them.
Yeah, like I have a group that wants to play Elden Ring, and they've beat it a few times and they've run through different characters. I think when the game came out, I played with them for like a week, but I didn't have like that much investment of staying with it because I was trying to do a lot of stuff, and they were playing like every day for hours, and I was like, oh, I got to do this thing. Then once I fell behind multiplayer wise, it felt weird that they were like 20 levels up on me, and we could still play together, but I felt like I was behind. I was like,
Yeah.
hey guys, you can just go do your thing. I'll play later at some point. Or didn't really get into it as much as everyone else. I think on the initial launch was getting into it in my own kind of personal time of how much I had. Yeah.
So when it comes to like kind of like video games in itself, and because you also really into board games and stuff, so I'll ask like a double question. It's like,
Yeah.
what is one genre that you really liked as a child that you either really like it more because of how it evolved,
Yeah.
or it kind of went south a little bit because of either it's just not like a used genre anymore, or it's just like, yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of this and it's not really innovating.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a couple different ones come to mind. Probably like early Pokemon is something that I played all the time and was really immersed in. But I feel like the design direction that it's been going recently hasn't spoken to me. I don't know if it's the design of the Pokemon themselves or just the way that the story is kind of super linear and doesn't feel that immersive. Like it feels kind of hand-holdy through the game.
Gotcha.
Not that the early ones had that much story, but I think just something about them felt much more like pure as a concept. Like
Kind of like adventurous in a way.
yeah, I don't know. I just remember like Gold and Silver, you got day and night cycles, and there was just this discovery aspect of like, I don't know where something is. On Fridays or something, you could find like Lapras in a cave, but only on Fridays. So it's like trying to figure out like where does stuff in the map show up. Internet wasn't as prominent back then, so like you would go to school, I'm like, oh, I found this thing. Like you got to go around the cave and like under the waterfall, and then you find something. So there's that discovery. I think now it's too easy to find how to do something. I try to never look up stuff if I can, just to keep it like a mystery and play through the game in the way that feels like I'm discovering.
We talk about Pokemon a few times too, because it is one of those games where it's like it had to change for a while. It was adopting, and it was a game based on a lot of the limitation of literally the cartridge itself.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, they're starting to get into 3D, they're starting to do that, but then it feels like, the bugs are being introduced for like $1 billion title. And it's like, oh, this seems kind of weird, like that, these kind of issues are kind of happening with it. It's like, well, what's going on? Because Legend of Zelda is not really having all these issues with this Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild did really good for the Switch.
Yeah.
So what about for a board game? What are like a type of board games that you like, and that you're like, you know what, this has grown the best, or like, you know what, I wish there was more to it now after all this time.
I played a lot of family games growing up, like Sorry, Monopoly, Game of Life, and stuff like that, which to me now is different than like the board games that I play. That's what like people who don't play in the tabletop space would call board games, the stuff you'd find at like a regular store.
Yeah.
Like there's the whole other side. If you go to a board game store, you're gonna find like tons of titles that are all different strategy and party games and stuff like that. My group played a lot of Risk growing up, which was kind of in that classic.
Yeah, Risk is one of the mobile boards.
Yeah, but we made up our own like Risk cards where we added stuff to the game where you could get these battle cards if you did certain missions on the map, and you could play cards from your hand that would disrupt like how people were moving. So we kind of modified it to our own liking. But we don't really play Risk anymore, even though that was like a big thing before. But maybe it's also because we've learned what other kind of games exist that are kind of in that same strategic vibe, but maybe more, not necessarily well developed, but just give more strategy that we can play with kind of at where we're at.
Do you get into the board games on the phones as much, where it's like either they're the old ones kind of ported, or like when someone just actually makes a board game, whether it's the virtual ones or just like, oh, I just kind of did something because I like the interaction of it?
I haven't played too many board games on mobile or in video game form. I feel like there's a lot of potential in that space. I think there's stuff that's growing. There's websites like Board Game Arena that lets you play board games in a browser, or like Tabletop Simulators, one that lets you upload games that exist and play it like on a 3D table on a computer. But I think that space still has a lot of room to grow in terms of accessibility and just what games are on mobile or on a console.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a gap between those two, video games and board games. Like, they're like in separate camps, but I think they're really similar, and you can make them better by, you know, getting elements from each of them and kind of shifting. So if you have a board game and make it digital, you save like calculating stuff, and you can have effects that showcase more about how things work. Or you could take a video game and simplify it into a card game or a board game.
Yeah.
Get the essence of it, but tweak it in a way that makes it feel similar, but also more tactile. With you can play with people socially, and you can touch the cards and move things around, so you get a different feel of the game.
So we've kind of got, you've been liking games since you were young. You've been liking designing games since you were young. You know, you found a path to go to a school that was at least willing to help you on the low end with the programming and stuff. And then once you kind of been on your own, you're like, no, I'm gonna be on my own for real. You know, do the indie thing, actually do the thing that you want. I'm interested, what made you go the indie route instead of like working for a AAA company or a AA company?
Yeah, I think I was driven by creative freedom when I was in school. Maybe in my third year, made up my mind that I wanted to try it on my own before I went to a company, because I knew if I went to something AAA or kind of in a more corporate setting, I'd start at the bottom, and I wouldn't really be like a game designer in the sense of helping lead pieces. I'd have to, you know, kind of make my way up the ladder. So that led me to push for, I should try it myself and see if I can do it. I think I have the base skill sets to make stuff. And coming out of school, I started to do prototypes on my own, programming video games, and found that like I didn't have the skill set all the way to do everything that I wanted, but there was ideas there that were good, and I kind of kept letting myself follow those. And over the years of doing independent development, have learned to trust that my skill set's getting better to the point where I can make games that I can emphasize the ideas that I have in a video game or card game and represent kind of what I really want to represent now with that skill.
That's a pretty big answer, I will tell you that. I relate to it, right? Because I think one of the things you kind of find out about AAA is, I mean, you're working to be a part of something else.
Yeah.
You're working because they have the team, and a lot of times, even me, like sometimes I'll look at a company differently based on the game that they actually make. Like, it's hard for me to kind of work in the game industry for a company that does like a game that's like I wouldn't really play. Totally. Because I wouldn't really know how to add it, and then I'd be making it so I feel like it's enjoyable, but in a way that I don't feel like it would be enjoyable for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that I understand, like, I'll kind of be locked into that. Now, after doing indie for a while though,
Yeah.
do you feel like you still went the right direction?
There's a part of me now that's interested in going into a company because of the networking and the mentorship and meeting people who are building something and learning how that team aspect works. So I do a lot of development more solo, or like maybe just hire one or two people here and there to do stuff.
Gotcha.
But that's a different environment than working with a team of 20 plus people or something. In terms of if it was worth it or not, I think the people I've met along the way by going to meetup groups and trying to network and kind of showcase what I can do and finding other people who are doing their own stuff has led me to people that have become lifelong friends and people who have taught me a lot of things that I don't think I would have met in the industry, and also has led me to people outside of games in terms of like just regular design or art or things that if I just stayed in a kind of a box in a company, I don't think I would have been exposed to those people.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think in that sense, totally worth it. Those people are like, that's priceless to meet people who could be your lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Like I'd sacrifice some of the income or some of the stability to learn that. And I think also with that, learning how to set your own limits and kind of trust and show up for yourself is a skill set that's important, and learning how to learn also, where maybe following kind of another person's plan, you lose track of those qualities and that discipline.
Gotcha.
So all those things together, I think, totally worth it.
Thank you for taking some time with me to kind of talk about that. But I will have to ask one final question, kind of wrap it up. Well, how do you feel about gaming right now? How do you see it now after the years that you've, like the 32 years, started young? Based on what you said, you started pretty young.
Yeah.
Because me and you're we're really close to the same age.
Yeah.
Like, there's really not much difference.
Yeah.
how does gaming look to you today?
Such a hard question, but coming from an era when games were just starting, when we were growing up, there's just kind of the first or second wave of games coming out. Seeing over our lifetime of like how that experience as a kid has evolved, maybe through indie games or kind of games resurfacing now, a lot of HD remakes of things. There's a lot of nostalgia factor of like, this was from before, like I can remember the time when we had these games. So I almost feel like it's moved, like it was gone and then it's coming back, where like the experiences that I remember playing are around again, which I think is exciting because people that are getting into games for the first time can experience like what we might have experienced playing some of our favorite things, but now like slightly better, or the design has evolved. So I think I'm excited for where things are going and how much games are going towards looking into our roots of where we've come from, but expanding upon that and making them better and learning kind of as an industry together.
I don't think I could have said it better myself, even if I tried. Kevin, I really appreciate it, but I want to give you something back, just like what you just gave me. You got 30 seconds. You say whatever you want.
I'm trying to release a game called Marshmallow Party. It's super cool. I'm gonna be trying to do a Kickstarter sometime this year. So if you like what I do and want to subscribe or check it out, that'll be somewhere in the link, or I'll give a website for the future for you to find it. And thank you so much for listening.
Kevin, Otoshi,
Yeah.
thank you again.
Thanks.